Some motherfuckers always want to shave ice, but the shave come too close. What bitch? Yeah. Blade, bitch. More like ice blade. No, more like switchblade. See switchblades? Yeah, son. You ready for this shit tonight? Today, this morning. I know what it is. I'm day walking. I don't matter what daytime, nighttime, noontime, it's tea time, noonsies, second breakfast. It's all good. I got you, baby. I got you. Oh, I gotta.
Let me see. Where's your sword, man? There we go.
Who you think you fucking talking to, son? Where's my sword? Where's your dick? Oh man. Okay, now we can officially begin the festivities. This glorious Blade Day podcast. We take it outside.
I was wondering if you were going to come in with the tapered, hairline coming in.
I couldn't get to the barber in time because I was busy doing shit.
Can you imagine just walking down the street with that blade cut and just like trying to be a normal dude?
I got Tybo. Oh yeah, see, son, I got the kits for you.
We need to blame Liam for not having his own.
I prostrate myself before you.
I was trying to dig out. Because I've got Blade's glaive too. But it's yeah, but it's I can't get to it right now, unfortunately.
But it comes back to you. Oh man. Oh, the shenanigans we have. It's all good.
Swear to God, if I pull my damn headphones out of my mixing board one more time, I am.
It's that much fun, right? It's so exciting. So exciting.
So exciting.
So exciting.
All right, let's get this show rolling properly. This is going to be events. They're going to be cold open, I guess, or whatever you call it.
Oh, we have the cold opening. All right.
Okay. All right. Oh, also, I gotta get some beers. This is gonna be too much fun without the beers. Not that I'm alcoholic.
Where's your sword, man? That is a great sword, though. It's like all time top cinematic sword.
Definitely all time. It's not my number one, but it's in the top 5, I think. My number one is still always going to be Connor McLeod's from Highlander. That's always my number one cinematic sword. But
does none of them actually have the spikes that come out of the handle, right? That would be
that would be you could they did release a version that had the spikes out that you could buy.
Already.
It didn't have just for display. I mean, these are not real swords, let's just put it that way. They would very likely, I mean, I could stab somebody with it, but if you blocked it, the blade would probably snap off. So, they're not exactly the highest quality. So
right.
Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Good.
Sound good.
Okay.
Oh, how are you today, Liam? I didn't really ask you that. You doing all right?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I mean, I had such a great time with Blade 2 last night. If you could do, if I could, I mean, we'll get into it, but if you could do like the EKG meter of like biofeedback from me to Blade 2 and then Blade Trinity, it's like my whole brain is on fire and then it's just like ice. It's just so I tried to give it as much of a chance again, but it's just like, like I said, we'll get into it. But yeah, so I it would have been funny if we had done the pods after each movie. Because I would have been like, yeah, let's fucking go, let's party. And then after the third one, I'd be like smoking a cigarette, just like fucking angry. So, I'll try to keep my energy from the first two for longer because I know that's more our brand and more what I like to do anyway.
Well, I know like Mike likes it, so it's all good. But I'm gonna call that shit.
I mean, like, but let's get to it, right? Like, let's get to it. Let's go through the positives and then we'll spin it back around at the end, I guess.
Yeah, I am. So I will say I liked it the least I've ever liked it rewatching it last night. Watching because I very rarely actually watch all 3 Blade movies back to back to back. I've only done that a couple of times. Normally, I basically just watch 2 because that's my favorite. So if I'm going to watch a Blade movie, why am I not going to watch my favorite? So watching them back to back to back, yeah, man, And what I really noticed, this is good podcast content. I'm going to save it. This is stupid. Why are we burning this before we actually start the show?
That's what I meant. Let's
so
go.
exciting.
All right.
You recorded that, so you can edit that in somewhere.
Yeah, I'll come back to it anyway. But
Okay.
all right, I'll bring us in 3, 2, 1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for this week's Action for Everyone for this here October 23rd of 2022 for another Punchy Boys and Super Creeps in our month-long journey through action horror, because some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. I am your host, Mike Scott, joined as always by Vice Blade. Vice, how are you today?
Hey, yo, what's going on? This is so much fun. All right, we just go well, we'll introduce Liam in a minute, but I was going to say, I was getting so pumped for today's episode. I was like, I'm going to watch all the Blades. I'm playing the Blade video game. That sucks shit. I'm going to do all this shit. But I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just winging like I always do, because that's what the people love. Love it when it comes from the heart, not necessarily from the brain. Although, that said, if you've done your homework like I told you to, you should have also read my essay that I posted on my Medium page, to link prior to this, so you're well prepared for this in-depth, glorious discourse of the Blade films. But otherwise, beyond all that, I'm doing good, guys. I'm so happy to see you guys today again. It's great Sunday, and it's just we're doing such big things. It's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, let's get back to you, back to our main man, the third amigo in our troop. Here he is, Liam O'Donnell. What's good, baby?
I just told my wife I'm going into the room to hang out with my friends for an hour or so. I'll talk to you later. And then I was like, oh, that's really true. So I'm feeling great. Happy to be with you guys. Happy to talk. Some of my favorite movies ever made. So let's go.
I did want to say, Vice, when you tweeted your essay from the A4E account, I was like, oh yeah, you can totally tell this is Vice. There are not nearly enough fucks in it, and I would never use a word like implore on Twitter, so I was like, you can tell it's totally
the best part is though I write the way I talk, but I talk different ways. Like when I'm in angry mode, you can tell. When I'm in scholarly mode, you can tell too. Either way, it's so much fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, boys, Blade. I mean, that's there's nothing. We kind of looked at news and stuff like that, and honestly, there's just anything's gonna be secondary to Blade. So let's just dive into talking about Blade. Liam, when did you first see Blade?
I saw the first one opening night. And it's one of the few movies that I think I went back. I was with my girlfriend at the time, and then went back home and talked to her older sister's boyfriend, and was like, "You guys got to come." And I think I saw it within a week. I went to see it twice at the theater. So it was a pretty immediate impact for me.
Vice, how about you?
Yeah, I think about the same thing. Opening night, me and my high school friends, and and it was kind of funny because not funny in the spirit of irony, maybe because most of my close high school friends were various, first gen / immigrant, various Asian, Caribbean, so forth, and so this. Okay, so I have to imagine that for any person, just any random average person, moviegoer, seeing Hong Kong style martial arts in American production is mind blowing, just by itself. I mean, it certainly was that for us, but this is also that specific mix of Wesley Snipes' blackness and this kind of raw, Asian Hong Kong style martial arts that's shown crisply and clearly, and even in some ways, not quite any way it has been shown. Well, at least to American eyes. That's just there was just such a maybe not spiritual, but just so that resonated so much what was happening on screen to who we were as young kids, who enjoyed movies, enjoyed action movies and stuff. That shit is life changing kind of stuff, I imagine whatever the same way Spielberg when he watched Flash Gordon or whatever kind of stuff, or read Flash Gordon or that kind of stuff. It's that's the feeling we had watching Blade kick the shit out of vampires. Yeah, life changing film.
Yeah, so for me, sorry, I got distracted because I had tweeted about Blade Trinity and said, keep your hater ass opinions to yourself. And people did not follow that instruction.
You're already fucking up there on Twitter. You're fucking up.
Anyway, we will be talking about Blade Trinity down the road here today. But yeah, so for me, this was such a unique experience for me because I was already you know, again, being the old man on the podcast, I was already a big Wesley fan. I mean, I saw New Jack City in the theater. I saw Passenger 57 in the theater. You guys know how much I fucking love Demolition Man. So the idea of a full-blown action kind of movie with Wesley, but I was also I'm not gonna do revisionist history and say I was a big Blade fan, but I was at least familiar with Blade. He'd been in the animated Spider-Man series. I had read him in several comics because I was a big Moon Knight guy, and he'd show up in Moon Knight and Ghost Rider and stuff like that. So I was actually familiar with the character of Blade. And so the idea of Wesley playing this fairly obscure Marvel comic character was, I mean, I couldn't wait. This was, you know, in just the trailers alone made it look, it had a very Crow vibe. And so I saw it opening day, and I actually will admit, as we get into it, I still do have some issues with Blade, and they're the same issues I had when I first saw it. Primarily, I think it's paced really oddly. But boy, as I had tweeted, dear reader, did I embarrass myself in the theater when Blade catches the fucking sunglasses? Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Because yeah, that
and the techno that kicks in right after the drum and bass. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing for me with Blade is it's all about building up to that moment, to that fight scene, right? And that fight scene is such a release. It is so fucking good. And just the way he keeps kicking people, and he's like, Frost, you know, and he's like kicking dudes. And then yeah, I mean, it's so good. Such a release of everything that's come before it. Yeah, I mean, you know, and then rewatching it again this time. Yeah, it's a great fucking movie. I have some minor nitpicks, but it's a great fucking movie. And this time I truly did. Well, I don't want to get into my thoughts this time, but yeah. So Vice, when you're the Blade guy, I mean, you're the one that's been championing this movie on Twitter for years.
Yeah. I think my main thing, or my main overall thesis or position, if you will, is that what I want to establish, or what I want to impart to people who've seen it since or haven't even yet, or even the younger fans now who are into Marvel, the MCU stuff, is like, this movie was such a critical cinematic turning point for several things. Yes, for comic book movies most directly, but just action film in total, and even in some place like the way blockbusters in general, like well, the first thing we'll go to the Marvel point just for briefly, like the fact that because as I mentioned in my research during this for my thesis paper, like this was a part where like they like after the 80s into the mid 90s, where like Marvel was on the brink of bankruptcy, you know, trying to get from underwater, and so they tried to and there were several things on the comic book side, like Marvel Knights stuff, like these are like Punisher Max, these are kind of alternate side story kind of things, or one shots, you know, trying to like go aiming towards a darker or more mature audience. And you know, I think Blade was part of that. And so like, but the film Blade was kind of the movie iteration of that, to try to capture a new audience. And so like just as a business decision, you could say it was so crucial, vital to the success of Marvel, the company, and how it would grow the later success of them becoming a major film juggernaut to be bought by Disney and so forth and so on. But also, so it's just that. But then also, you got to remember the time frame this came in. Like, so this is 98. This predates The Matrix. You know, it predates. It's like people kind of, to most people, to The Matrix is kind of the real turning point to the 21st century. You know, first it came in 99. You know, this is like Yuan Wu-Ping, Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, millions of dollars in special effects. Like, this was like the new age. It was the flagship new age of Hollywood blockbuster. Like, you know, and before this era, you know, it was the 80s and early 90s, to Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, mostly kind of conventional or conventional, practical, mostly effects. You know, even with Terminator 2, for example, like, you know, it itself being cutting edge with the special effects department. There's still, you know, that's still a real helicopter going under the underpass, you know, along with the T-1000 doing all this cool like 3D melting shit. So for the most part, blockbusters were still fairly grounded. But then, as things like say Independence Day '96, we start to get more heavily into the special effects, churning out, producing the bulk of the excitement, for so to speak. And of course, Will Smith, his like breakout stardom into like global superstar. So this is all happening in this time frame. This kind of rapid evolution of blockbuster cinema. So then you have here's Blade though. Here's a relatively mid-budget R-rated action film, and it has the same kind of high blockbuster facets. The CG, special effects, production value, but then also the external international influence, you could say, of the Hong Kong style martial arts, and this is also a critical part, the international flavor of it, like the overt, like how nowadays, from there to the Matrix to like make to the Marvel movies or Iron Man 3 making scenes explicitly for like a Korean audience, that's a long line of events that came to there, and this is part of it. This willful and intentional international effort of melding styles and aesthetics, and even people, staff, actors, crew, to do these things, to like expand the template of what action cinema is. And Blade is a critical part of that component, where you have this, like I said, it's this mid-budget thing that's doing all these things at a pretty high caliber and doing them well and capturing the audience, on its own strength. Because again, like, yes, it's a comic book film, but it's also like most general populace didn't know who Blade was. So it has all these kind of different facets going for it that make this special, like kind of a lightning in a bottle event.
I was just gonna say that I wrote notes during watching it, and my first one was like, this is a pretty much how to make a mid-budget movie. Like it is great melding of amazing location work with very strong but like elegantly simple set design. And even when we talk about how much visual effects are in the movie, I guarantee you there's less VFX shots in this than like a typical episode of TV now. It's just because the effects are in that in between stage that they really call attention to themselves. But it's really, I mean, I'm sure it's way less than a normal Skyline movie, and this is a $45 million movie. You know what I mean? Like there's a ton of invisible VFX and things we do now. And I want to just say one thing about the VFX is that people need to show visual effects artists in these movies that are turning points the same respect and give them the same sort of leeway that they give practical effects artists in movies that are turning points. Because you go back and you go, hey, I know that the Terminator puppet in Terminator 1 is not convincing as it's driving down the street, but it is cool. And they tried to do something ahead of its time. And I think there's a lot of that stuff in Blade, and you'll see people say stuff like dated, and they don't give the love. It's like, it's the same nerdy dude sitting there who loves movies, who's trying to make this thing look cool. Why do you give that one respect and you don't give these ones respect? So that's just something that always has bugged me, that people will always use words like dated on early visual effects stuff, but then they'll go back and say, oh, but the practical effect was so good. And it's like, they're just as, kind of hit or miss when it comes to these things. But anyway, I think just to jump in and say that this is how to make a mid-budget movie.
I was just going to say, Liam, just tagging on to that point, I think that's going to actually come up even more in Blade 2, because certainly in Blade 2, there are some, we'll call them dodgy VFX, just for lack of a better term. But again, they were trying to do things that, on a budget. They were trying to do Sam Raimi's Spider-Man level VFX on a budget that was a quarter of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So you do have to, I think I agree with you. I mean, I don't think I agree with you. I know I agree with you that like, you do have to give a little bit of credit for this stuff, because they're trying to push the boundaries on all of these. I will say, if anybody's watched the special features on Blade and has seen the the original Lamagra ending, God love them for looking and going, yeah, that's not going to fucking work.
Right.
Like, let's not do that. Which goes to your point of, this is perfectly of how to do a mid-budget movie. You have this ending in mind, you get into it, you realize you do not have the fucking resources to pull it off. And so you change gears and you come up with something that actually works. And in a lot of ways, I think it works better. It's like,
Oh, it's way better. I agree. Way better.
even if the La Magra scene, even if they had the resources, I want a one-on-one between Blade and Frost. I don't want a giant blood tornado Frost. That's not interesting. That's Suicide Squad, portal in the sky bullshit. Give me Dorf and Wesley Snipes squaring off, and that's a better ending. So again, a perfect example, as you know, Liam, of low budget, independent, or not like lower mid budget filmmaking necessitating changes that actually make for a better movie. I think Blade is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. And we got those amazing Dorf reaction shots during that ending where he's just like, so anyway.
He's like awestruck too. He's like, this motherfucker is cool. Like he knows this. Like and that's part of the text of the film. He's obsessed with Blade to a evil degree. But he's like, this motherfucker is so cool. I'm gonna fuck him up. Like that's part of the fun of it all. It's like we all know the audience, the characters. They know this is the coolest man in the universe. And especially like as eschewing that weird VFX kind of explosion, we get this like one of the best one-on-one fights in cinema history, honestly, which many people would agree to. Let's talk about a little like more of the technical stuff. Because I actually want to get like Liam's thoughts on this because like I came at it more from a narrative kind of thematic perspective, but a lot of the stuff like even now I'm only still just kind of discerning. Like so, for example, the scene on location shooting the scenes. So as I understand it, like most of this was done in LA, but I think parts of it were done in New York as well, or at least East Coast.
I only think the New York stuff is stock footage. I'm pretty sure it looks to me like it's all shot in this like New York section of downtown LA where we were talking about on Twitter with some of our friends, like it's where they shot like the Disturbed music video, like the Brothers Strauss and like Lawrence, Francis Lawrence, who did Constantine after this, like all that generation of music video directors. And I don't know if Norrington was one of them, but he was definitely obviously within that time span. It was just so much shooting down there because it was sort of the gritty, like, Fincher look. You could get it in this like 4-block section of downtown LA. It's not huge, but it's got a lot of character. And it feels like New York. So that's why like it, even to me, it reads like an LA movie to me. It's a very downtown LA movie to me, from even some of the stuff of the scouting that I did for Beyond Skyline and the subway scenes and Pershing Square. And I'm pretty sure they used the same interior subway car that we used in Beyond Skyline because it looked very familiar when he grabs, Karen and they go inside that subway car real quick. And that's not really on a track. You can kind of see that they got the green screen kind of flashing tracks in the background. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a very LA movie to me in kind of the best way.
Yeah. Well, because that's interesting to me. I feel like I kind of felt a distinct feeling of like it was any city USA, quote unquote, like, and like on purpose, like they kind of made it its own comic book universe, and so like this could be any major city, which they kind of stressed a little bit in the narrative part of it, where like like, for example, one line Blade is describing the power the vampires have, they own real estate, finance, they don't have it downtown, and it's like yes, that's easy. LA, but it could be just as easy in New York or Chicago or anything like that.
Right. You're right. That's in the text. I think it's just me bringing life to it. I'm like, oh, this is a downtown LA movie.
Yeah, but like I like that because it uses those tangible elements to make this kind of fantasy world. That's what makes it so much more real, so much more engaging. Is that you can identify specifically where they're thinking. Where for me, the trains they use, those are specifically like old Red Line, 7 train. Those are old New York style trains. Like you don't see those anywhere else in the country. Like that specific setup.
Oh yeah, it's the Seinfeld subway car that was, and it's at the CBS Radford lot, and that's the one that you use if you're shooting in LA. So that's why it is a New York train, but it was shot here.
I'm glad you brought up the Fincher thing, Liam, because this is a perfect example of this, right? Because where does 7 take place, right? What city is 7 in? They make it look like New York, but then at the very end of the movie, it's very clearly Southern California because there ain't no place within like an hour drive of New York that looks like Southern California. But that was a big thing in the late 90s, even the Matrix making Sydney look like it was a big thing to have these cities that look like any city USA. It's a gritty, grimy major metropolis, and that's all you really need to know. You don't really need to care about is it New York or Chicago or whatever. It's just know that it's a crap sack city, and people are dying left and right in it, and I think that's such a unique late 90s kind of vibe that really does make Blade and Seven and The Matrix and Dark City and some of these other movies, The Crow even.
Yeah.
Definitely The Crow, yeah.
So dated, but also so timeless, if that makes sense. Like it's dated in the regards of it's a unique look that's specific to that point in time in filmmaking. But because
I would simply say these things are of their time, not dated. Like
of their time.
Yeah.
A much better way to describe it. Of their time. Because we already talked about we don't like the term dated, but of their time. But also so timeless. Because Blade hasn't aged. Like that movie has not fucking aged me at all in terms of like if that got released tomorrow and I went and saw it in the theater, I would still be like, yeah, this is an amazing fucking movie. Like
they have these like distinct little touches of like you could say sci-fi, like the computers and stuff, and like the mix of old ancient magic plus the technology. So it gives us that timeless vibe of like this could be a cyberpunk thing if you really wanted. If you squint hard enough, it's a cyberpunk movie, or if you squint hard enough, it's also like a mystical, like magical fantasy, urban fantasy. It's all these things. It has these small details that are placed so well that it really kind of expands the timeline of what it is. It's just really well made.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we're all vaguely the same age, but Mike is ahead of us. But I was like coming right to the age of like I'm going to be going to nightclubs soon, and so like there's something very sexy about this movie just from the opening scene. And Vice's essay got into more of that I'd like to go on, but it's one of the things I would say, especially from the standout of the trilogy, is that even if 2 is a high point in a bunch of other ways, I still find this to be the sexiest of the movies by a lot. Like I think Wesley is very sexy in this. I think the cast and everything, there's a lot of sex appeal. There's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of alluring like nighttime nightlife vibe. Having the bad guys be this like Gen X coke snorting douchebag is just fucking genius.
I'll expand. Okay, so I'll expand this a little bit. So, like, one of the important things about Blade, the character, and this movie itself, is that his direct lineage from blaxploitation films of the '70s and stuff. Like, I think I do my research. I forget the name, but one of the creators, he was like, "Yes, this is a direct influence by things like Shaft and all the blaxploitation superheroes." And so, like, that's kind of in the comics. Like, I've read a few panels of the old comics. And he talks kind of jive. Or 70s style jive a little bit, which is, I guess you could say it's embarrassing now, but I get it. I get they were going for, It's and of course, sexuality is a big part of those blaxploitation films too. Like it's this black experience of reveling in our strength and our power and also our sexuality. And I get into this in the essay. So please, like seriously, like, if you guys haven't read it yet, when you guys finish listen to this, take a look. The black sexuality element is so critical as much as the kung fu stuff or the cityscapes. Going back to the blaxploitation part of it, because but also it's also crucial to the vampirism lore, like the very nature of the vampire myth itself in our real world is kind of based on like fears and apprehensions about sexuality and either not just sexual predators but also like the old kind of patriarchal thing of like the virgin maidens being spoiled or ruined by these sexy foreigners, so forth, yada yada yada. But this goes in line with like a lot of where the black element comes in is like the long-standing kind of prejudice and myth about like the crazed black sexual animal, like like how like but back from the slave shit even to like now so rights era even now like the you gotta lock up your wife lock up your daughter because the black man is gonna come in and get your girls that stuff is so prevalent and so what's so cool about and so important about Blade is how it's the convergence of those two social myths in, expressed in this mystical in this fantasy story and they both kind of enhance each other and so like Blade being a black vampire like and this is what I mentioned before. Part of this American myth is that he's the daywalker. He has the strengths of the vampires and the weaknesses. They want his strength. They want his blackness. They want his essence to make themselves better. And this is like it sounds funny to say a lot, but like this is true. Like look at like even when like you see like the young white guys just like gangsters or like hip hop gangsters who in turn hip hop gangsters are kind of modeled themselves off of the old Italian 40 gangsters of the prohibition era. This again this crazy line of like this social construct of what we consider gangster or cool or bad is represented in all this stuff that all this media we consume and all the social interactions that we play out. So back to the movie itself. So like that reveling in the sexuality and the black power from the black exploitation kind of stuff, plus the vampire myth of we have to contain, control, subsume this blackness for our own ends. It all comes together beautifully in this like really crazy ass kung fu movie. And this is the power of genre. Like we've been talking about this for the last few weeks, and like you said it last night. Action horror might be the best genre ever, and I'm kind of feel after these few weeks, I'm kind of feeling that way too. Like and like the great Neil Marshall that we had on our podcast last week because it was so big and awesome. He was like, you can explore stuff in genre that you really couldn't say out loud directly, or at least it wouldn't go over the right way. The genre element gives you that power to speak these truths to power in really exciting and special ways. So yeah, all this comes together in the black sexuality stuff, and that's part of what gives this movie its strength, and also and again this kind of critical turning point of film in general, like and so. But also with that, though, as you just mentioned, with Wesley Snipes himself, crucial. Like nobody else in the history of cinema could have done this. And hey, peace to Marshall Ali, man. I know you get the MCU play coming up to like I'm happy for you trying to do your thing, but no one in history could ever have done this. This is fucking Bogart in Casablanca. This is a once in a lifetime personification of a character.
He has the ideal build especially in the first one. It is like if you wanted to make a perfect superhero build because it's like functional muscle. Also, like he's not overly ripped. It's just perfect.
So here's actually important thing. Like so, I mentioned like the evolution of the blockbuster cinema. So you have like the old meathead guys, and Van Damme. They could arguably Steven Seagal too, but maybe Van Damme is a more obvious icon of guys who actually move, who could actually fight. Well, street fight at least. So Schwarzenegger was obviously very strong. Stallone had his own like he could get beat up really tough. He could get knocked down, keep going, that kind of thing. They all had their own physical thing. Wesley Snipes is a real belted martial artist. He has Shotokan and Hapkido. He has these actual real skills behind his acting, but also he's a legitimate dramatic actor. He's just Spike Lee and stuff like that. Like he's a real actor. Even the stuff of him and Woody, White Man Can't Jump. Remember Wildcats? Remember I said the football movie? Like Woody's a legit actor, but also who can fight well. So again, those two elements are crucial for this coming era of blockbusters, where you have to have nowadays you get like fucking Kumail Nanjiani can get beefed up and learn and go to like martial arts camp, or John Wick or Keanu, who was wasn't always a martial artist, but now he's like a fucking ranked jiu-jitsu player. Like they nowadays you go to camp to learn how to become an action hero. Not and quote unquote anybody can do it. Given that they have millions of dollars in resources to do so. But no, he had that already in his repertoire. So him being able to jump into that stuff and perform at that high level already was a huge deal. Where because just as a pure action movie, you're not gonna buy it if you don't think the guy can do the stuff, and he can fucking do all that shit. Then but then of course you have the enhanced effects to add to it.
But I think it's more than just that, because you could go and look at some of the greatest martial artists ever, and they can't move on screen and hit these poses and look this fucking cool. So it's like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna say, Mike?
I don't know if you saw my tweet last night about that I said, or the other night after watching Blade 2, that I don't know that we've ever had actors who appreciate the value of a pose like Wesley Snipes and Donnie Yen. I mean, the two of them just inherently understand the geometrical appeal of a cool pose, right? Like that's, I was so watching both Blade and Blade 2, watching Wesley and just being like, this motherfucker poses like nobody's business. Like every shot, every move he does is, yes, legit fighting, but he's also posing like he's doing a fucking comic book cover. It's unreal.
Right. Yeah, and that was kind of where I was taken away, is that like you can go and watch the greatest fighters do this stuff, but they don't think the way he does, or have this like innate understanding, which really works within the first two movies, because the person directing him really understands the camera and how to give him these graphic, like, you want to talk about getting hooked up. Like these are the hookup movies of all time, like throughout all of it. And then one last thing I want to talk about is his fucking performance choices in Blade 1 are so nuts. He like does not ever like look at people. Like he's changing the geometry of the scenes. When you're thinking about how you'd film a scene, you usually have two people in a room and they're talking to each other. But like his are always, instead of the two heads looking at each other, he's always looking this way and someone's looking at him, and he'll save his look for a moment or something as he goes out. Like he's very much kind of making things like an asymmetrical power relationship. And it's so perfect for this character and for this performance, and for the angst of that he's going through in part 1. In a lot of ways, I was saying, like, you could almost say that in some ways Blade is like a blessing and a curse for Snipes. It's almost a little bit like Jack Sparrow for Depp, or Scent of a Woman for Pacino. It's like, it's such a perfect role that I feel like he kind of was unable to escape it in some ways. And it kind of overshadows everything else. Like, he is Blade from this point on, but at the same time, there's a reason why those type of things stand out as like some of the most iconic screen performances of all time. So I just think from an actual acting standpoint, especially in the first one, I think the second one, which we'll get into, is a much more fun and loose performance. But one is a very studied, like, he is doing very specific things in every scene to change power dynamics and shift his way through and really feel like an outsider to almost everybody.
Yeah, very true. And so we could go to some of the character stuff a little bit, because like his arch nemesis, Frost, Steven Dorff, it works so well for this, because again, like, you would, on paper, you would think, oh, if he had this like big buff superhero black guy, we should get him an enemy who can match him. But no, what they do instead is they get somebody who's more cerebral, who's more like conniving and manipulative. Steven Dorff is like, what, 5'2"? He's shorter than me, probably. I don't know. I'm just bullshit. But that's part of the power. Is like, he has this mindset to like use the forces at his disposal to take down this enemy, and it works so beautiful. Again, and this is once again this social metaphor about they're afraid of this big black guy, and this small white guy kind of admires him for that, but also wants his power. So he's using all the skills and things at his disposal to get his power. And plus it's like the way like Steve Dorff speaks to asshole. Like it's like a likable asshole. It's so perfect what he's doing.
Sorry to interrupt you really quick, Vice. Let me just say this. This is the thing I noticed on this rewatch this time, is I had never, in all the times I've seen this movie, I've never given Steven Dorff the credit that he deserves for this performance, because he is sexy as fuck in the movie, like perfect goddamn hair. He is doing such a Reality Bites, Ethan Hawke, Pump Up the Volume, Christian Slater, like douchebag Gen X white boy asshole performance, which is also what Steven Dorff kind of made his career on. But it's so it's such a shocking, interesting, like you said, Vice, such an interesting contrast to Blade, where yeah, he's not, you're expecting Michael Jai White to be the bad guy. You want somebody that Wesley Snipes, and it's not. It's a fucking frat boy like, railing lines off a urinal. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, you can feel the post nasal drip in every line reading.
But and plus the fact that the Blade, the character, kind of responds in kind, because like at their certain meeting point they say, "You are nothing to me but another dead vampire." Like, he doesn't care what this white boy has to offer, what he has. He's just another dead suckhead, like to him. And again, that's part of like the that speaking to the character of the alienation. He's like, so like, you could say desensitized a bit. Like, that's all he does is kill. Like, that's all he knows. So like, in one sense, he understands the danger of vampires of society, but like, on the other hand, he's like, fuck all of them. I don't care what they are. They're all gonna die. So again, it's just that beautiful contrast of who they are as characters and how it works. Yeah, and I want to. All this time, all these years that I praised Blade, I kind of feel ashamed that I never really gave a shout out properly to N'Bushe Wright, who plays Karen in the film, and she is so critical to the success of the movie that people kind of forget about it. They just kind of think about all the action stuff, like both narratively and like as and structurally, like she's the human link for us as the audience, like this crazy world of vampires and stuff. But also I mentioned the black male sexuality part. The female black sexuality part is also very important to what's happening in the film. And also speaking of its time. So again, another important thing is that it's late 90s. So this is like at this point in society, at least American society, it should be the world. We're aware of the AIDS epidemic. We're aware of HIV. We're aware of like all these. We're aware of STDs. Like it's a thing that we are all taking seriously at this point in our history. And so one of the brilliant things that they do with like the mythology of vampires is that she, as her character, being us as modern day stand-ins or of the time, she understands and equates vampirism to, as she says, an sexually transmitted disease. Like, it's not. Yes, it is that there's some like mystical mumbo jumbo going on, but like she's like, no, these guys are like spreading disease, and we have to stop them. Like, and so she's and her character probably being a hematologist, a blood scientist, So her, and this is where the urban fantasy sci-fi stuff comes in. She's using her knowledge, her knowledge as a scientist and as a black woman who's been under the heel of all kinds of power structures to fight back against this power structure, using her knowledge and her strength with Blade at her side. And so, like, in one of my favorite scenes is actually not with Izzy at all. It's just with Frost and Karen, where this is the part where he tries to offer to turn her, and this is where she says the line about this being STD. And this is a very important thing. And like, again, going back to the slave shit, whatever. I was like, I think in recent years people have been aware of like there was I'm sorry I forget the name of the person, but there's a black woman in I think the 50s or 40s or earlier than that who died, and her cells were harvested, and they in turn, those cells were key instrumental to like a lot of modern vaccines and modern genetic treatment and stuff. And so like, but her contributions to science society were, one, hidden, two, stolen, and she never got credit for for what she contributed. And so that kind of stuff is in the subtext in the background of Karen fighting these vampires. And so, and then the other part though is when Frost says, he said, what is he? Is Blade not giving it to you? Like, again, he's taunting them as black people, like, you guys aren't really all that sexually virulent. We're the master race, stuff like that. Like, that's all this stuff he's implying, all this heavy subtext in this like little frat boy plus and trying to get it back on the scientist girl. Like, all this is happening under the surface, but it's like it's playing off like this creepy guy trying to get a date with this hot girl, and that's part of the brilliance of the film. Is like this loaded, dripping with subtext that you could apply in multiple ways, but it's still playing itself straight as these characters doing this thing, him trying to woo her or seduce her to the thing.
Well, there's two things I want to take on that. Is that like 100% N'Bush Wright? Like, my wife even asked when we were watching it, she's like, oh, how come she wasn't in all these things afterwards? And it's something we've kind of come across in these rewatches and talking about Neil's work last week, where was it Natalie Mendoza has this great role in The Descent, and she just obviously isn't given the same opportunities that probably, you know, a white actress would have been given. And I think in this, it's the same thing. I think she does a great job in this role, and she's obviously, you know, the camera loves her. And I think, you know, I'm looking at her page right now. She went on to do other work, but not if it was a comparatively.
I mean, you look, and she does Fresh, which is great with, and then she does Dead Presidents, which is an amazing fucking movie. And then she does Blade, and then kind of nothing, you know, like she shows up in the Chappelle Show. Like it's we as a society failed Nabushe, right? There is no question about that.
So yeah, it's just very important that, you know, before I say anything else about Blade, either now or in the future, like I do have to recognize Bushi's great contribution to like just the film, and also the vampire mythology as a whole. Like, you know, like having that, you know, I wouldn't say she's Van Helsing. Maybe that's more Whistler's part, but like, you know, this modern understanding of what we're fighting against, like symbolically speaking, she's so important to this movie. A lot, just as much as Blade is as the black man fighting the system. She is there too, and that's true of all the black exploitation films. Like again, that's in it. Like, you know, Foxy Brown and all the heroines who help the heroes. Like they're so important to these movies. So we're going to make sure she gets her props or credits for that too.
Well, while we're here, though, we also have to talk about the other sexual relationship and subtext in the film, and the other beautiful black actress in the film, in Sanaa Lathan.
Oh my
if
God.
I'm saying her name correctly. But I mean, it's just such a silver bullet, pun intended, for Goyer in his script. Like I didn't see it coming the first time, which is, you know, because I'm not like Mr. Try to figure out as I watch. I let movies happen. But I mean, it's just like, oh shit, it's such a great moment. It happens exactly when it needs to happen. And then you know, when she's on face to face with Blade, and she's so damn hot. That is just, I don't know, Vice. You noticeably omitted talking about that part in your essay. So I want to hear what is your takeaway of that?
I've avoided that for several years because exactly that. Like, his mom is so fucking hot, and so along with the vampire mythology stuff, there's also this like kind of like a, you could say, Shakespearean element to the proceedings too. You know, like, you know, the council and the history of the vampires and the temple. You know, all this kind of old school like. So yeah, that's definitely, absolutely 100% a part of this. Like this Oedipal complex part of it. Like he's fighting this blood feud, blood crusade against the vampires because, like Batman and his parents got shot in the alley because his mom got killed while he was born, and like because of the vampires. And then for him to see her, like, one, she's alive, well, undead, and two, she's hot as fuck. it's like you can, and well, he doesn't say anything, but you can just kind of like see just small parts of his way he plays it off, like the shock and the, like, you know, what now? What do I do now? But again, of course, you know, his drive takes over. No, she's just another dead vampire, unfortunately, and you know that plays out too. But yeah, like, oh my God, Sanaa Lathan, another like, she's fortunately had a good career, you know, in the years since. You know, she's a big star. But yeah, just like, oh my, talk about, like, if you want like sexy vampire movie, oh my God, you couldn't have done better than fucking her. Like, God damn.
I don't want to be the CinemaSins guy, but I did notice this time that, like, right before he's told there's a cure for vampirism, but then his mom says she was like a wild girl, and he's like, no need to cure you. It kills his mother. I was like, it didn't just. I don't know, but I did really, also a very like funny part. I don't know what accent happens to her when she's about to die. So all of a sudden she says, "I'm your mother." You wouldn't kill your mother, would you? Why does she say mother that way? It's so funny to me. I don't know. Do you hear it too? Am I going crazy? Yeah. Why did she say it that way? Yeah. You wouldn't kill your mother. Yeah.
Talk about the vampire cure is going to be a recurring problem as we go farther into these movies, because it's like, okay, so if we've got a cure for vampirism, and again, not to be a CinemaSins guy, why are we fucking killing vampires and not curing them? You know, it's like, if we want, like, Scud can be like, you know, whatever, he saved me, and then like when we get to Trinity, Hannibal's like, oh yeah, Whistler hooked me up with the cure. It's like, if we can just fucking hook people up with the cure, why are we dusting all of them? But
I presume that it's like a logistical problem with it. Like for so many people who are hunted by vampires, like not enough. Like it's like we can barely get the fucking COVID vaccine popping.
Well,
You think we can do fucking that?
Well, I think a morality comes into it too. I think there's a morality that, like, if you liked being a vampire, you don't want to be cured.
And that's kind of how I rationalize it in my head. Is basically just there are some vampires that are very much like Lost Boys. You'll never grow old, you'll never die, and party forever. And those ones they're beyond saving. But then you get ones like Hannibal or Whistler, who they don't want to be vampires, and so you can, maybe you're just selective about who you save. But it's a weird, creating the vampire cure was a weird little. It works great in part one. It is a thing that I think if you realize your part one's going to be a massive success and you're going to now have a franchise, you maybe probably don't do, or you do differently in a way that like maybe only like Nebuchadnezzar Wright saves herself, but it's like a one-time only deal.
Yeah, it's a one-off because she got it right when she got bitten, and she's a blood, a scientist. But yeah, I agree. I think maybe we should get to part two because we're already an hour in on Blade.
Well, I'll say one more thing about the cure. Again, back to like her being a scientist and like the black element. Like I love that again with the modern understanding of disease, she says outright that vampirism is a genetic disease like sickle cell anemia. And again, sickle cell anemia is specifically a disorder that affects mainly people of African descent. So like again, like this, and so this is the same way as Blade's black vampirism is these vampires' supposed savior. She is the real savior of vampirism in that she understands this thing inherent to us and can use that knowledge to that's a really powerful thing. Honestly, it's like to put that element in the text, like we have the power to save ourselves. With what people might think is our weakness. No, we can use our knowledge to our strength. So I guess that's my defense of the vampire cure. And so the same way that they need him, we need her. So it's really, really important thing that I think that we're stressing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it definitely is not this movie's fault. It's undercut by later sequels. But yeah, let's talk about Blade 2 because holy shit, when I saw this theater opening day, I was already a big Guillermo del Toro fan, and fucking hell, I ascended watching this fucking movie, man. I ascended watching this. But Liam, what's your first experience with Blade?
I mean, I just put it up there in the list of some of the best sequels of all time. It really, and I was just reading this morning about his process and how he actually watched all the dailies of Blade 1. Guillermo did when he took the job and just wanted to, and he was very complimentary of Norrington's style, which it is. It's like I know I would say Blade 2 is the best one, but I'm still saying Blade 1's like a 9 and Blade 2 is a 10. I'm not really taking anything away. It's just it's a bigger budget and it's a really great script. I cannot fucking emphasize how great of a fucking script this is and how much almost every single fucking beat and line and macho douchebag bullshit fucking just works for me 100% hook, line, and sinker. So for me, I sat down and my wife had never seen it, and so she'd seen Blade 1 so many times, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe you haven't seen Blade 2. And she was kind of on her phone as I'm starting. I'm like, you have to watch the beginning, you have to watch this. And so I'll start there and just saying that it's another one of those in a just world. This makes Luke Goss a star. This is his Boyka. It's it's a miraculous performance.
Oh yeah.
He's fantastic on every single level. The design of the Reapers, the rules of the Reapers. I fucking love the Reapers, and he is the just one of the best villains in a series like this. He's so perfect and somewhat sympathetic. You know, I don't know. It just, to me, that's where I'd start with Blade 2.
Yeah. So this actually, I will maybe controversial, but I want to make sure I'm clear on this because I love Blade 2 just as much as I love Blade 1. But I think that some people would say, well, some people love Blade 2 more than the first one. They say it's a better movie. And I think the important thing for me is that, and maybe others who feel the same way, with all the subtext and depth and thematics that I spoke about just now in the first one, are more or less absent in the second one. So on one hand, you can see why that might bring it down for people. However, it does have has its own. Whereas there's less social political subtext in part two, there's definitely more of its own myth. Like it takes the mythology higher. It's now beyond just being uh, allegory. It's more of like, we're going full on with the mythology and lore of vampires. This is now the vampire mythology as we understand it. It's what we want to do with vampires. And so with that, though, it does that very well because I mentioned the Shakespearean stuff and before. This one goes full tilt with that. The blood family, the vampire overlord Demaskinos, cool name, Demaskinos. Like it goes full on into mythology without having to worry about the subtext too much. So I could see why some people would think that's a failing, but once after seeing it, after kind of like digesting it over the years, like I totally get it. It's I think that and Del Toro, to his credit, is no stranger to like political allegory or political subtext or even political text. He's not ever kind of person who would shy away from any direct condemnations of fascism, whatever. Like we know he has it in him. But I think in this case, he chooses, I'm going to forego that for now and just have fun with this vampire mythology that's been bequeathed to me and make a great rousing story. So I'm totally okay with that. So I would say, I guess my official ranking is that I do think that Blade is maybe a bit deeper or more profound than 2, but 2 is unquestionably one of the greatest sequels of all time. Unquestionably, like like maybe not going off in its own direction the way like Alien to Aliens, but it's still like we know you guys love Blade, we know you guys love this mythology, so let's have real great fun with it. And he does that like so perfectly. He does that. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing for me. Is I think you're right. And I'm with Liam. It's like Blade's a 9, Blade 2's a 10. Like we're not talking about like
right.
I mean, I think it's like I said earlier, I have some issues with Blade because it's a bit off. This is, I think, better pace. But what I love about this one is this is fucking Rule of Cool, the movie. GDT just absolutely hooks every fucking person up in this movie. And it's also so fucking funny. I mean, Chris Christopherson in this is fucking hilarious. I'm not a vampire. I can't see in the dark, you fucking nipplehead. What do you expect me to do? I mean, it's so delightful in so many ways. But, Vice, you talked about like that. It's not quite tied into the inherent blackness in Blade like it is, other than, of course, obviously Ron Perlman's character,
Yeah.
But there is nothing in Blade 1 as filled with awesome moments as it is that will ever be as cool to me as Blade in the water, about to drop the light grenade, going, "You obviously do not know who you are fucking with." I mean, that is so goddamn cool. And that's exactly what this movie is. This movie is just cool. It's everything about it is just cool. And we've got a great villain in Luke Goss, like you said, sympathetic, but still a monster, which is, a very Guillermo del Toro thing. He loves his sympathetic monsters and understands ultimately they're still monsters. But I have watched this one so many times, rewatching it again. I just reaffirmed, like, I think this is absolutely not just one of the greatest sequels of all time. I think this is one of the greatest action horror movies of all time. I mean, if I was forced to pick my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie, this might be a hot take. I'm picking Blade 2.
I'm with you. I was thinking of doing a fucking, a moronic tweet about that last night because I was just like, it's time for some hyperbole because I'm fucking high as a kite on this movie, and not that it's surprising anyone that I'm a dumb bro mind who would be like, what Del Toro's best movie is Blade 2.
Yeah, no,
But
it just is. It is. I fucking think it is. I'm sorry.
It's the only one where a hybrid vampire strain does a flying elbow drop onto Wesley Snipes. So like, I'm sorry, it's gonna obviously be up above any other thing else. Fishman fucking and stuff like that. I'm more into this. But I'm glad you mentioned Chris Christopherson because we managed to talk about Blade for an hour and we somehow missed Whistler in the first one. But whoever fucking, if it's Norrington or whoever got the two of those dudes together is a goddamn genius because that is just such a great contrast between those two actors and bringing Whistler back. Which it could be one of those things where you're like, yeah, the logic or whatever. It's just like it's so necessary because when Christopherson, rescues Blade and gets him into that blood tank, like and has those moments, you're like a son to me, and it fucking actually does work for me. It gets my heartstrings. It gets me.
Oh yeah.
Up. Like I love the two of them together, and he brings so much to these movies. It's another problem of Part 3. That they don't really give him the send off that he deserved. I fucking love Christopherson in this, and he has some great one liners and hammered shit. Every word out of his mouth is
yeah. And to go back to the first one, yeah, like Christopherson is again another crucial part of that film. Like, and then like you said, like the contest not only between the villain and them, but between his allies. Like Christopherson, like this kind of stalwart hillbilly kind of guy. Like he's mountain man with the with Blade's city sickness. It's like it's such a perfect contrast. Like the racial unity, but again like this kind of the Bound family. Like that is his son. Like that is his father. Like and of course Blade he doesn't want to admit it. Of course, but I do gotta that scene in the Blade's. Whistler's off, when he's attacked and he's left for dead. Talk about tears, man. Oh my god, like the way that Blade forces himself not to react and say like they're first all these they have these very intimate moments, like when he's doing the serum, for example, and Whistler has to give it to him, and they hold hands, like they're holding hands, like he's because it hurts. So he's like he needs that attention. Like no, he's holding his hand because like he loves him. He's like he's there for him in his moment of pain. And again, when he dies that first time, that thing is there too. Just walk the fuck away. Like what? Like holy shit, this has got real. Then, so then when he's back now, it's like you could definitely they give Part 2 gives them more time, or give Whistler more time to like establish that relationship further, and you see even more so why they love each other, like truly love each other as people. And then you see also why you see also why Whistler was in the game so long. Because this guy, he's a bad motherfucker too. Like he is no fucking joke. So, you see why Blade kind of
he's like old man Newt scampering through the fucking exhaust shafts and stuff. I was also going to mention it's in 1 and 2 because we're talking about the coding with the STDs, but they also code the way that Blade deals with his thirst as a junkie. He's very much portrayed as like a heroin addict in those scenes where he's getting those shots and he's like trying to go cold turkey and he's moving through the DTs and the shakes. And then in Part 2, he's off kind of getting a little serum burst. And when the Nisa walks in and sees him, it's kind of like a shameful thing, so it's an interesting, very, very much of the moment thing as well, to kind of bring in this STD, sickle cell, heroin. It's like this weird mixture to signify and code all of the things that are happening in these films.
But like also I think the Toro kind of, like I said, he doesn't like as opposed to trying to like delve deeper into that blackness because that's maybe not his lane. He instead does his own thing where he's like the drug epidemic. Like you could say it's a meth kind of thing because you see the main Luke Goss's character going after drug dealers, like specifically like you remember in the beginning they had the blood cocaine the red cocaine in the warehouse, like
You're goddamn right. I remember that scene. Like, what is that like?
it's very much like I wouldn't say war on drugs, but like here like the drugs is as much an epidemic as vampirism. Well, that's what kind of Del Toro is like kind of equating to. And again, that's what makes the lore deeper. These this vampire overlord cartel. It's kind of like make sure that there's no other competitors of vampirism almost in a weird way. So they have to hire this mercenary Blade to come take out the competition in this crazy sense. Yeah, yeah, like. I'm like, okay, that's Alzheimer's right there. You want some? Nah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, and that's also and also Scud offering a blunt or a joint to Blade later. So it's implied that like at the end of the day, Blade gets down. That's funny.
There you go. MDMA bad, marijuana okay. There you go. That's the point of Blade too.
Which I guess we could get into the Norman Reedus of it all and some of that like you said, that like right from the beginning, Wesley's playing this in a different physical thing where he's facing the actors with him. He's much looser. He's having a lot more fun, but that's also part of the script. And to get into the Blood Pack, I'll just say, I don't know if you guys talked about it because Trent came in here and I had to beat him up on my bed for a second, but the Blood Pack is just anime as fuck. Like, it is just the most fucking anime group of people that ever walk into a normal-ass movie. And you're like, oh, okay, I know what I'm fucking in for now. And which leading us into this, basically, you mentioned Aliens before. I think it's a huge influence on the script. I mean, they pretty much do the Aliens hive sequence at this fucking awesome nightclub, amazing Guillermo del Toro sets, interspliced throughout, just a virtuoso sequence. So I don't know, Mike, you guys are both anime experts, but go on about the Blood Pack for a little bit.
Yeah, no, the Blood Pack fucking rules. I mean, first of all, yeah, I love that we get so little time with them, yet every single one of them is more or less given an individual, distinct characteristic. There's certainly, again, the idea of fucking Donnie Yen just getting to Donnie Yen it up for like 2 scenes, but I love this concept. I mean, this is to me what a sequel should do. Like Vice, you talked about, the Blade has all this subtext and socio-political subtext and stuff like that. And to me, this is what a sequel should do. A sequel should be, we've laid all that groundwork. We've done all of this. Now let's fucking just take the handcuffs off and fucking go. And that's totally like that whole House of Pain like club sequence is so crazy to me, the way that they you get all the characters, because you get Matt Schultz and Ron Perlman showing, Matt Schultz again. This is also the time of Matt Schultz being king douchebag in Hollywood, right? He goes this, and then he goes, goes fast, this, and then Transporter, like,
Torque. We got Torque there.
Oh, I totally forgot that. Yeah, he's the like we were really living high on Matt Schultz there for a couple of years. But also then, you get ultimately Blade going into that fight that leads into his amazing fight with Nomak in the church, that it was actually choreographed by Donnie. Donnie choreographed 2 fights in this, and that was one of them. And it goes even harder on the Hong Kong style action than the first one did. Which is crazy to me, because the first one's already the most Hong Kong ass American, action movie ever. And so, I love the Blood Pack. I love the biggest thing I realized watching it this time, and this is no criticism of, and where I really noticed it was actually going back a little farther, the first fight with the Blood Pack, where Blade turns on all the lights and they're all backlit fighting in that.
Right, and that talk about that, because that's a big CG like moment.
It is, and the CG is, by modern eyes, not great, but back then I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, this is so well shot, because again, and that's what ultimately what I was going to get to is Stephen Norrington did a great job on Blade. Stephen Norrington ate Guillermo del Toro, and that's really what I noticed this time, is that fight. That first fight with Nisa, where they're all backlit by those floodlights. And yeah, even though I mean, it doesn't matter that the CGI is dodgy because Del Toro has such a unique understanding of framing and blocking and how to just make shit look good that I don't care. And the House of Pain sequence is kind of the same. There's some dodgy CGI in there. I don't care. He creates such an interesting environment that we're watching all this stuff that it doesn't matter. It's all, I mean, the Reapers are almost always dodgy CGI when they're not practical, when they're CGI, like when the one gets split and but then still climbs up the ceiling. It's a bit dodgy, but I don't care because the Reapers as a concept are so fucking cool. And the realization of what the Reapers look like are so fucking cool that this is one of those movies where I'm just like, I'm sorry, this is as good as fucking cinema gets. This is
It is. It's better than several movies that were nominated for Oscars over the past 20 years. Let's be honest.
So here's the first two main things. The first thing, the CGI. So just how I mentioned how Blade 1 was critical to the evolution of superhero movies and blockbusters. 2 is the same thing. Now this technically Blade 2 predates Spider-Man, in fact, because this came out in March of 2002. Spider-Man came out in May. So I mean, realistically, of course, they probably were being created at the same time, if not more. Spider-Man probably had more years behind it too. But that one sequence, the opening sequence, it's in the DVD, it's called Bite the Bullet, where he goes from the warehouse, he jumps down into the streets, and that is an amazing shot because that seems unbroken. That seems like a real. He does you see him, the camera at his back. He jumps down. His body becomes the CGI model of his body that does that flip down, and then it cuts from the CGI model landing to him posing. It cuts back to him, and it's fucking seamless. That is a fantastic VFX shot. And from what I understand, that same technology, the body modeling, is in fact the same stuff that they use for Spider-Man for him swinging around. When all the swinging shots of Spider-Man in Raimi's first film, that's the same process that they use from that jumping scene. So again, this is a critical keystone milestone in blockbuster cinema. This one, even though it's only a few months apart, that stuff primes us for the stuff we see in Spider-Man and the decades that followed. So and just like you said, Liam, for all the spotty, dodgy parts of it, you have to give the VFX artists credit for pushing this stuff forward to the next evolution, next phase. So definitely
there's only one shot that actually kind of bugs me, and it's in that first Nisa fight with the floodlights, but it just feels like he could have cut to some real footage in between the CG right at the end a little bit more. He holds on that one CG shot, and you're like, they're not even doing anything that they needed to be doing CG. It's just he wanted to stay in the one shot, which is fine. It's fine. They tried, but most of the other times, it's the flying elbow drop. It's the CG double comes in to do something that the human wouldn't be able to do, or if you did with wires, would look really dumb. That's the thing people get upset. Well, why don't you do things with wires? It's sometimes we do shoot it with the person on the wire, and it looks like they're in a diaper flying across the air. It doesn't look right. It's not an answer for every solution. So the CG double can do things that no human can do if you use it in the right way, and more 90% of the time they're using it in awesome ways in this movie. So again, respect to your CG forefathers. These are all people that watched the movies you loved as kids and said, I want to go and work in movies and make the coolest things possible, and they got to work on Blade 2 and you didn't. So shut up.
So real quick, you mentioned the hooking the people up. And this is, I think, the one thing that maybe, the one thing Del Toro took and ran with from Norrington is he gets these cool hero shots. Well, so that fight in the warehouse, in their base. So I want to give a quick shout out to our man Aaron Vargas, aka the Young Latin Dragon, because he did a quick, he's a aspiring martial artist stunt person, and so he was trying to. He had a video on Twitter a few days ago where he was redoing fight sequences from Blade, and he noticed, being a martial artist, that he noticed that Wesley Snipes' movements are so unique because he has this breadth of skills, Hapkido, Shotokan karate, capoeira, even boxing, and he can mix them all so seamlessly together so that he can go from a cool ass roundhouse spinning kick to a straight up right cross, that's what this guy can do. and it's really hard to emulate for anybody, let alone a young actor. And so I love what Del Toro does is that he amps up not just Wesley Snipes' power and skill, but his grace. So in that same fight in their base, he's fighting Nisa, still masked, and he has a sword. His sword is unsheathed; it's still in the sheath, and he's blocking all her attacks with one hand, but also and then he twists the hand. Then he like when he has her trapped, he like does this a pure away. He does like a ballet move to twist over her swords and knock her out with like a punch. Like he's doing Baryshnikov stuff in an action movie, and nobody else can do this kind of shit. Like this is like wow, like this is Wesley Snipes is a phenom, and Guillermo del Toro totally picks up on that and lets him do this like outlandish stuff that you might not expect or want him to do, or he couldn't do in the first one because he's so hard and tough and gritty. No, he lets him fly. He lets him float in this movie, which is like a really great choice, I thought, to like expand on the character Blade's like moveset. Like, because he has in the I think in both DVD commentaries, both 1 and 2, where these types kind of through several fight scenes, he's commenting, he's like, yes, Blade and I, Wesley, have these like Asian background, these Asian influences, but also, as he says, to quote, Blade's a brother. Like that's his like soul. So he doesn't move like Jet Li. He doesn't move like Jet Li. He moves like Wesley Snipes. So he has all these like complex, flamboyant movements, but he's still gonna like box in your lips, if he wants to. And again, nobody else can do this. Nobody else can float like that. Float like a fast like a beat. Nobody else can do these graceful movements and then come back with like fucking like a hard from the streets hit like that. But yeah, so I really appreciate how Del Toro took advantage of that and used the CGI and used the effects to like let him float and let him fly. Especially with the Nomad fight in the church, like they're doing like straight up, like they do straight up like like a like deadly like movements, but it's still this big white guy and a big black guy fighting. Like, they still go at it, It's so perfect.
The thing I really noticed rewatching these three this week is I don't, I've always loved Wesley. I've always thought he's one of the best in the business, but I really don't think I ever fully appreciated what a unicorn he is. He just, nobody moves like him. Nobody cuts a silhouette like him. Nobody cuts, Scott did an Art of Action with Eric Jacobus, and Eric was always talking about the geometry of fight scenes and the geometry of stuff. Nobody has the geometry that Wesley does. Like, he is such a unique action star, and we'll probably never get anybody like him again. I mean, he is a one of a kind, and that's fucking legit, man. That's amazing.
This was one of my umbrages of your greatest action stars ever honorable mention pod with Scott, and I wanted to bring it up when he was on, but I forgot about it. Maybe I chickened out. But it was just like, you guys are mentioning Antonio Banderas, and you're going down the line. I'm like, where the fuck is Wesley Snipes? How are you guys not talking about fucking Wesley Snipes? Like, I put him above Antonio. I put him up above a bunch of people on that honorable mention list.
No, that's if I had it to do over again, there's no question he would be on that list. That's an oversight. I'll own that. That's an oversight on our part. Because I just, he is so unique. So just like I said, he's a unicorn. There's never anybody.
Yeah, and let's talk about a great action scene in a very. I think it's when we talk about the subtext, Vice, about blackness, and I don't think this works the same if it's a white guy in his introduction to the blood pack. The scene where he grabs Reinhardt and puts the explosive on the back of his head is just one of the fucking greatest action scenes of all time. And it's not a fight scene, but it is one of the greatest alpha male out-alphaing a group of people that I have ever seen, from like a script performance to execution. And I loved it the first time I saw it, but this time was just kind of like, holy goddamn shit, this is a crackerjack perfect fucking whose dick is bigger here. Wallop.
It is like the very overt, can you blush? Like, because black people can't normally blush, I guess. I never tried. I never did it. I don't know, but like but I love that. Maybe I think people miss it. Like, he's like, when Blade calls him Adolf, like he's very aware. Oh, it's some black shit, huh? I got you. And he does this thing to him, like That's perfect. Like, let's cut this off at the head right fucking now. You are not cooler or better than I am. You never will be, hillbilly, till they take it.
right, and that's the stuff that he doesn't really do in part one as much. Like he doesn't give people anything in their scenes. He'll be like, "You're just another dead vampire." He's like, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." But in this one, it is that's where it is that looser, more fun, less angst, where it's just so exciting.
They follow it up with the scene in the club where Reinhardt's like, "I could just do it right now," and then you look down, it looks down, and Blade's got his laser dot on him, and Wesley he does this grin throughout this one in Trinity that is so fucking delightful. Like even in the start of this one when he like stops the motorcycle right before the car and then looks in the mirror and like gives it a kiss, like he's having so much more fun in this. It does feel like a natural progression, right? All of the angst that he dealt with in part one, he's over now. And this is a guy who's accepted he is Blade the Daywalker. He is a vampire hunter. And he, do what you love for a living. You'll never work a day. You're really getting that vibe here, right? Because I love all that interplay. And then, of course, it pays off again after the big fight scene, the Blade fight scene where he comes out of the blood tank and
well, back up because now we've set up the explosion thing. Before that, there's the twist of Scud being on it, and it's again they're trying to out alpha Wesley, and I don't know, like this is where these things where we talk about stars and how they like to be portrayed, and like Stallone is always in the mix about this, and you talk about the Fast and Furious movies where I can't lose a fight. I can't lose an exchange. It's a lot of this stuff, but it's just so fucking perfect in the Blade movies because obviously, especially part two, it's a fucking monument to Wesley's awesomeness. And in the scene where Norman Reedus gets to chew scenery and say that, he's a familiar and that he's been, setting him up the whole time and he let them all in. And then you just have Wesley say two things. One, I've been on to you since they turned you. And two, it's not a dud. It's just, he goes, oh, it's just so fucking, it's like, I wrote yesterday, I was like, this is a masterpiece of a script. I don't know if he wrote it or Wesley wrote the moment, but like blowing that fucking asshole up. Like, it just gives you everything you want in that moment. And it is like, I knew that you thought you were ahead of me the whole time. That's what my former speech about keeping your enemies close, your friends closer, your enemies closer. Like, he's been alphaing them on levels the whole fucking movie.
Can I also tell you how much the way Norman Reedus smokes darts in that movie drives me fucking nuts? Like, dude, I can tell you're a pothead. Nobody actually smokes actual darts. Nobody's ever smoked a dart like this. That's not how this fucking works. That just makes me want to punch him in the face. I was so happy when he got blown up.
This too, he's rubbing his lips all the time. He's just got such a fidgety nature in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned the anime of it all. Like, so of course, the climax. They're in the evil fortress, the futuristic fortress. And they got to do the big fight. Again, all this stuff is coming to a head. The Tomorrow's influence and the vampire stuff. The sci-fi stuff full on at this point now. And and to be fair to Wesley, or to the character, he does get fucked up quite a bit. And, once they capture him and stuff, they're gonna then the creepy lawyers are like, are you a vampire? Worse, I'm a lawyer. What a great line. So, but they're gonna do this. They're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna harvest Blade's black blood to make their white race superior. So in that regard, it's still there. But then once he kind of powers up the blood tank or whatever, and again, along with the gracefulness, they let him go out with the WWE suplex on the fucking goons, and the elbow drop, they let him go. It's so fucking great. It's like that's he's not all this. He has all this power to bear, all this skill to bear. So he's like, fucking do whatever you want, and it's beautiful. I know some people when I went to the theater, some people laughed at it because oh my god, but it was like a good level. Like, oh yeah, of course he would do this. He's Blade. Of course Blade would suplex somebody through a fucking glass floor.
Oh yeah, I mean that sequence one. I'll just say when it first came out on DVD, I would cue that up and watch before I go to the gym. I was in DC at the time in internship, so I was in a room with 5 other roommates. They'd be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "You don't understand. I'm fucking. It's the name of the game, baby. I'm getting ready." Last night I got up, I'm fucking shadow boxing. I was just like, it's so much fun. It's one of those. I don't know. There's been it's really tough, but like Blade 1 and 2, the way they mix their music into with the fight scenes is just, it has an impact that I know a lot of movies try to duplicate, but they just don't hit the same way. And I gotta think it has something to do with Wesley,
Yeah, and again, like same thing is like only the Matrix to a degree has done that as well. It has its own iconic soundtrack, but because the whole emphasis is on the cool, like these.
I don't feel like in the Matrix they're listening to the music. Like I feel like fucking in Blade's head, he's like hearing the fucking name of the game track. You know what I mean?
Okay. So I've said this before, and I fucking agree with you, because this is the thing I've always said about music. Like needle drops in movies, they don't need to be diegetic, but they still should feel like the kind of music that the characters would listen to. And 100% Blade is listening to Name of the Game. He's fucking listening to Chemical Brothers to get pumped up. There is no doubt in my mind.
That in the zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, which actually is one of the things that I really like that Trinity does, which is they do make it diegetic, but it does work. Like the soundtrack in Trinity is also, say what you will about Trinity, and we will, but the soundtrack of the movie is also fucking incredible. It's fucking great. The Blade movies might be like top to bottom the best soundtracks in terms of needle drops that have ever been made consistently in a
frame. Yeah, this reminds me. So going back in history a bit. So before this, like a year before, Blade was 98, so 97, Spawn, the much reviled superhero movie, the failure in some regards. But again, I think an important milestone for Black superheroes, Black. And so that one, for all its faults, the soundtrack is fucking amazing because it has this unique mix of like the techno plus hard rock stuff. The whole concept of the album is these two disparate genres coming together, make these tracks like the
same producers that did the Judgment Night soundtrack, which did metal and rap. They did the same thing with Spawn. Like, man, we were feasting in the mid to late 90s on fucking.
And so same thing with
Judgment Night, the top. Judgment Night's number one for me. Maybe Crow. Crow and Judgment Night are my two 90s soundtracks that take to my grave.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing with the Blade 1 and 2. Blade 1 doesn't have, everybody knows like the Blood Club song, but there's no really like a standout per se song. But like the whole vibe of the movie is here's hip hop and techno / house stuff, and that's all throughout the soundtrack of the first movie. Second one is more overt. There's I think it's a Cypress Hill collaboration on that one. It plays during the Blood Club scene.
So, but also the second one is the same thing. It's all the whole soundtrack, other than Name of the Game, is all hip hop artists and EDM artists. So like my favorite song on it is Mos Def and Massive Attack doing I against Flesh and Mouth.
That shit. Oh my god.
Yeah, oh my god. That fucking scene again, speaking
That's when they're walking into the house of Pain, right? That's fucking sick.
So props to that. Okay, so we spent enough love for Blade 1 and 2, so I guess it's, at this point, sadly, we gotta talk about this movie that I've been told has happened, but I don't know. It's not a real movie. Blade Trinity, starring Deadpool and that girl from the Dawson's Creek or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what that show is. That white girl. I don't know.
Give it. Come on.
So here, I'll do this. I'll say this. I actually never talked. Actually, honestly, I never talked about this to anybody really. My thoughts on Blade 3, like in earnest. So for me, it was really, sadly, kind of one of the most disappointing times I had in the movie theater. Even taking in all the good stuff it has, which it does, to be fair. But the opening, the first act, where Blade is deceived to kill a regular human, quote unquote. And the government, the actual government, our real life government is after him. I was like, oh shit. Like, one, he's like revealed to the public or whatever. And two, is like, now the subtext is text. He's not just against the man as the vampire. He's against the man. Like the feds are coming to fucking get him. So I was like, oh, this shit got real fast. And then, and then especially like when they kill off Whistler, that first part, I was like, fuck, this is the last movie, huh? They're going all out. So that first act happens. I'm like, oh shit, what's gonna happen now? And then fucking Ryan Reynolds jumps into this literally through the screen, with the fucking with the vape to give to Wesley Snipes. Wake up, Blades! Wake up, call. No, this is the death. This is a death knell, motherfucker. Because like once that happens, it's like, like Ryan Reynolds comes in to literally steal a fucking movie from him, and he never gives it back.
It's a colonizer ass movie. Let's just say it.
Yeah, like actually, you guys might know better than me. Like the actual like behind the scenes or backstory, but like I think Wesley has said this in interviews. Like I think part of the whole like kerfuffle between them and DeGoyer and what it was like they basically, it was said they wanted more white people. Like I think that's part of the animus or the friction behind the scenes, and so they did that, and the movie suffers for it in a way because it's like, and to be fair, like there's plenty of white folks in Blade 1 and 2. That's not what it means. Like it means like the tension or the drive is taken off of Blade, going to these ancillary characters who are no match for what Blade / Wesley can do. Well,
no, I agree. But I think it's really complicated, Vice. And we could go into this. It's kind of something maybe build to, but I'll just say that I've heard stories about Wesley Snipes being difficult. I think that's kind of out there, right? But I think people would be surprised. Almost all of these action stars are considered difficult to work with. But why did it manifest differently with the black male action star? And I feel like, with him, it kind of gets pushed into like when a woman's difficult and she's like, oh, she's a bitch, she's crazy. It's the black guy. It's like, oh, he's crazy, he's aggressive. And so I don't know. There is like a weird, things happening there, and it is very uncomfortable that they're pushing these two lily white actors to be, his sidekicks, especially in hindsight. And I think Reynolds is not his fault, especially at this point of his career.
Yeah.
But I feel like that character is the real Achilles heel of the movie. If it was about Whistler's daughter, which it should, I don't think she should be his daughter anyway. I think that's a pretty big retcon. I think it should have been like a niece or something, because it just completely, anytime you have a dialogue that's like, actually it was out of wedlock and blah, 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 blah. It's like, you're already fucked. You're already fucked if you're doing that type of, explaining of things that make no sense in the context of the previous films. But like, I just feel like that, Stallone is, people have said Stallone's difficult to work with. They say, Vin Diesel, all these people, but like, I don't know, there's just something sort of ugly about it. Like, the first, African-American, comic book star, and they kind of tried to replace him with these white people in the third movie. So but aside from all those other things, there is an ugliness to that feeling that the vibes are off immediately.
And to be fair, again, it's like I can see the way forward with this premise. This is a third picture, several years in, the society itself is changing, evolving. So it makes sense for people like, here's the stoic black warrior and these punk ass kids. Like that's a funny premise on its own. Like you could see that playing out, well enough. With the, them, I did the part where I did enjoy. Like he's like because Hannibal King, his fucking name's this movie. He has the
In fairness, that's a legit Marvel Comics character, Hannibal King.
Okay. So I stand corrected, but that's not a Hannibal King. That's a fucking
it's not a dude from Vancouver. Come on.
Yeah. but anyways, no, he has the what do you call it? Like the stickers when you put on your chest, like hello, my name is, and so like he's kind of it's a funny gag. It's a good gag. He's like, hello, my name is fuck you.
I don't think it's funny. In fact, I didn't laugh at anything for the first hour of this movie. The only time I laughed on this watch was when Blade, grabs that dude and is like, motherfucker, I'll kill you, and goes into the blood farm and then says, I'll give you 20 seconds. 20 and shoots him in the back. Like that was the funniest part of the movie, because they got away from Ryan Reynolds an hour in, and I was able to actually laugh. And like I've said, I'm not the anti Ryan Reynolds guy. I'm Reynolds agnostic. But in this movie, I cannot, like, none of it works for me. It's the opposite of Blade 2, where everything is firing in my brain on all cylinders, And then if you looked at the inside of my brain on this, I literally sat on the couch with my arms crossed for the whole fucking time. And I laughed at when Blade shot that guy.
I'll say this last point for now. So like again, like I can see where this could go on paper, like because that scene where after they've regrouped, he says, what is it? My name is fuck you. He says, "You think this shit is a joke?" And when he says that, "You think this shit is a joke?" All serious, I could tell that was Wesley talking to Ryan. That was not Blade talking to fucking Hannibal King. He was like, "Who the fuck do you think you are coming to my movie?" Like you could feel the animus in that line again. And I was like, "Yes, tell this white boy off."
I know the whole time I'm like on his side, like, fix this script in the scenes, please.
So like again, like I was there. I was like, okay, the movie started like off as in like they're putting Blade off balance to begin with. So I was like, okay, I want to see where these punk ass kids can help Blade, fight the man, whatever. I see that. I'm not thinking about. I'm like, I want to see where this is going. I'm with you. Then the fucking Triple H and the white girl go get Dracula. I'm like, fuck this movie. I was like, I'm done with this shit. Like it lost me like completely from there when they go in and black helmets to go get Dracula to fight.
That's the opening scene. So
no wait, that didn't happen afterwards. That didn't happen after he killed the guy.
No, the first scene of the movie is them going into the tomb of Dracula.
But is this an edit? I could have sworn. See, this is how bad I remember the fucking movie. This is how much it fucked me up.
They open with that. You don't see him. It just does like a. Okay, I mean, we'll just get to the big overall thing here. Is that it's so great to watch these movies, especially if any of you guys are aspiring directors. It's almost like a perfect distillation of what a director's job is. You can see, like we said on part one, it's how to make a mid-budget movie, and you see Norrington using everything at his disposal to really maximize this budget and create this palpable energy and bring together all of these different influences. It's a masterful. I know it's his second movie, but his first movie is a much smaller thing, so it is almost like it's his studio debut. And it's a shame about him because I think he could have been one of the greatest directors of this generation if he had kept it, gone on and not got so discouraged after his experiences on LXG. And then you go to Del Toro, who is legitimately one of the greatest directors of his generation. And you see, what is a director's job? Think about the scripts for Blade 2 and the scripts for Blade 3. I think the script of Blade 2 is the best, but it's not that the script of Blade 3 is terrible, but it's like, what about is the director's job of taking these words on the screen and translating, or taking these words on the page and translating it to things on the screen. That comes into staging, that comes into composition, that comes into the sound mix, which the sound mix on 3 sucks. The dialogue is all weirdly loud and reverbed because it's a writer thinking dialogue is the most important thing and it has to be super clear, and there's not really much of a world around the words. It's like the staging sucks. The Drake chase scene that ends with them on this rooftop, and he just kind of has Wesley like warp into this shot so that he can be perfectly standing across from him, even though it really makes no sense what's going on here. There's an inability to make Drake vicious, which is so bizarre because he's kind of just redoing Deacon Frost, but Deacon Frost, who's this little coke snorting 5'3" guy, comes across as a titan compared to actual Dracula. And again, Dominic Purcell is a good actor. I've liked him in other things. So that again falls to, I think, the directing as kind of letting people down. Even Triple H. How are you not going to give Triple H a tight-sleeved EMT shirt? It's fucking Triple H. You have him looking like a fucking sack of potatoes in this movie. They didn't give him special hair or anything. It didn't hook him up whatsoever. And the jokes on him are just, none of that really works for me either. And I think, Jessica Biel does a great job in this movie, and I feel like that would have been the interesting thing, but all of their scenes together get sucked up on other things, so they don't really have much of a relationship. And it doesn't pay off on the Whistler death as a handoff between these two people that both loved this man that died. That none of that's there. You get none of those heartstring moments. I'm supposed to give a shit about Natasha Lyonne, which again is a converse to Blade 2, where the Blood Pack, like Mike said, you meet them for a second and you know everybody. You get all their vibes, and you're kind of like even invested when this guy Priest, who's been nothing but a dick, gets killed by a Reaper. But all these other people, they're just kind of set up as nice people. Now I could tell there's probably 10 pages of script that got cut out of those scenes, you know, with the Night Stalkers. But there's such an interesting contrast between the Blood Pack and the Night Stalkers. And like, I can understand why it made sense on the page to do it. And I could see, you know, a more, you know, in control of their craft director making this script, or at least the bones of this script, into a better movie. And one last thing before I'll end my rant here is that I thought in my mind Wesley Snipes was 6 feet tall. And on this movie, I Googled his height because he constantly makes him look little. The camera is up high, pointed down on him. He's got him next to Ryan Reynolds, who's like 6'1", which is like, again, from a casting standpoint, I wouldn't cast a 6'1" guy next to my hero if he's 5'9". I wouldn't do it. It's bad directing. It's actually not the right idea to do. And then I wouldn't constantly, like, he actually has a badass line at one point with at the end with with Drake. And, you know, the camera's pointed down on him on a train. And it's just like, he's like, I was born ready, motherfucker. And he looks like a 5'9" dude. It's like, no, if you do the contrast of, you know, in Blade 1, where he turns around, he's getting shot at the hospital. The camera's low, pointing up at him. And he's like, motherfucker, are you out of your mind? Like, he looks great in that scene. He looks like a fucking mythic giant in in the first 2 movies. And they constantly make him feel like an ordinary dude in this one. I could keep going on and on, but that is really, it is like, what is the director's job? And it's not that it is the worst movie ever made or anything. It's just dropping off from a 9 and a 10 and going to like a 5 is so disappointing, that it makes it worse. It makes me more angry. It makes me sound like a fucking lunatic. Because it is like script watching in reverse. Like, you have to actually watch the script and ignore the execution to be like, there was stuff here that could have worked. But definitely. Anyway, I'll take a break.
Yeah, so
we got to let Mike talk eventually, though.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna, so Mike, before we're being way harsh in the film, so hopefully you can set some mild salve on this. But I gotta say, Liam, I love. I don't have the authority to give passes, but I love your Black Wesley Snipes voice when you do your paraphrases. It's okay in my book. But anyway, so yeah, please, Mike.
I can't help it. I'm sorry. It's too good.
Mike. Yeah, let's come to Mike. Yeah.
I actually had an old episode of Adkins Undisputed. I think it was, it was an old episode of my old podcast, where we were talking about Bad Boys, and I kept quoting Bad Boys as I normally would. And then when I was doing the edit, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, I sound so fucking racist right now. So I had to cut all the times I'm like, I cannot do that. Like, hearing myself actually say it, I'm like, I fucking can't do this. Anyway, all right. Okay, so boys, I think it's fair to say I really can't disagree with any of your criticisms. You know, and Liam, I want to tag on 2 things you said that I noticed this rewatch again, because I don't normally watch these back to back to back. One, the short thing, the like making Wesley look short thing. Oh yeah, I mean that I was like, what are we fucking doing? like how is he looking like? He's like 5'6". Like, not only does he make him look 5'9", he makes him look like he's fucking 5'6".
No, yeah, I was gonna say he looks 5'7", 5'6" in this. Like, even the guy that he the police chief that he cast to bring there. Why'd you cast a guy that's 4 inches taller than Blade? Like, stop doing that. Yeah, anyway,
but also I really just the step down from Del Toro to Goyer is noticeable. I mean, it is noticeable. This is a very poorly directed movie.
It's a fucking chasm is what it is. It's a Jesus Christ.
That being said, as I said last night, to me, this is like the DTV sequel to Blade. This is the, Roll Rennie comes in and makes the DTV sequel. And as that...
oh, shit! Oh, my God!
I still think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I mean, you know, I'm powerless against Reynolds, right? Like, I get it. I'm powerless. Liam, you said you didn't find him funny at all in this. He cracks my ass up this entire fucking movie. I can't help it. I'm sorry. You know, that's right, you horse humping bitch. I'm sorry. It's a terrible line, but it makes me laugh.
That scene is roughly 40 years long. I can't stand that fucking interrogation scene.
Yeah,
It's-
no,
I gotta say, you cock juggling thunder cunt. You know what? He got me with that one. That was a good
It's
one.
just so try hard. It just tries so hard. Where that line would work if there wasn't 20 fucking jokes before it, you know?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, you know, it's in my left ass cheek and no, yeah, like I get it, but I still am powerless against it. I'm powerless, not to sound like a pig, I am powerless against Jessica Biel's shoulders in this movie, because they are a sight to behold.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? I want to say I don't mean to disparage her specifically. I'm kind of half joking when like she kind of ruins the movie. But no, it was very clear from her choreography and movements alone. She was definitely like 100% committed to this performance. Like she got ripped, toned up. You can see her like, you know, you can see her being studious with the choreography. Like she was definitely not the problem with this. Like you could tell like she was like
She's got like 40 lines in the script. Like if the movie was actually about Jessica Biel and Wesley Snipes, it would have been good. Like that they have a good thing.
He does also do some stuff, I think, in the fight scenes that's really interesting. She moves a lot like Wesley. She does some of those weird pose things in the fight scenes. Like there's one where she dusts a vampire and then she like actually like it's during the last fight. She like actually like spreads the dust. And I'm like, you know, again, geometry, like what looks cool. Like that's cool shit. And I also really, really love the transition from the little girl telling Drake, my friends are coming to kill you, into the gear up scene backed by Black Labs, This Blood, as Blade and Whistler are gearing up. Like to me, I think, look, this is not a movie that I can really push back on any of the criticisms because I think they're all accurate. I just happen to still think there is some real fun to be had here. Liam, you nailed it right. The biggest problem is this movie's a 5. I would maybe give it a 6. I think it's a little better than a 5, but we're coming from a 10. You know,
Yeah.
we're coming from a movie from an unbridled, absolute goddamn master of the craft, making, as we talked about earlier, what you and I think is his actual best fucking movie. And so the drop down is really noticeable. But I think if people approach it and view it as, like I said, a DTV Blade sequel, and go into it with that level of expectation, there's a lot of fun here. There's good stuff in this movie. The problem is it's very, very badly directed.
And they don't give Blade anything you haven't seen done better in the other movies. That's another big problem. There's no new Blade thing that's like, you know, that you haven't seen rendered in much better ways.
I do have to admit, when he saves the baby from Drake and then goes Gucci goo,
Yeah, that's nice.
That's
You know, I think part of the hurdle is that, you know, the truth being that it's not a DTV. This is like the as far as we could tell, the final theatrical entry of this amazing series. You know, maybe I don't know if the comparison to the Matrix Revolutions is right, because that, you know,
Resurrections.
No. I mean, part three.
No, part 3 is good. Part 3 is like a real movie. It's way better than Part 3 is way better than Blade Trinity. Don't say that.
I'm gonna fucking mute you, Liam. Let him finish.
No. What I mean is, like, you know, like after the, you know, when 2 came out, people were like, oh, like the expectations. I mean, the expectations of, like, you know, what's going to happen with the story. And I do think that part 3 is a great ending. It is, like, you know, because it's the Wachowskis, like, putting themselves fully into what they want the story to be. But just from the general audience perception, I mean to say, people were mixed about it, you know, because, like, it wasn't what they wanted. And, you know, this is why I had to say with this comparison, because, like, those expectations are part of the meta-ness of the Matrix, you know. So, like, that's fair to that movie. But in this one, it's like with Blade, it's like this is supposed to be like the final outing of Wesley Snipes' grand fucking series. A series we know, like The Matrix, has this great action, this great themes, this great subtext, this great text. And it's like, and so I was in the theater for part 1, like, I'm mind blown. I was there for part 2, where I got my mind blown again, even higher. So I'm in a theater with. It's very reasonable for me to somehow expect in some way to get my mind blown in part 3. And like I said before, that first act, I kind of was. I was like, oh shit, she got real. But then it went off the rails. I'm like, this is a fucking huge disappointment. So I was like, I would always say the hurdle for like accepting it as a DTV thing is that for us who were in the theaters, like, that was the promise, or like that's hard to accept because we was there for the first 2, and now we're here for this, and it's like fuck it, let us down.
Well,
but like having said that, now that we're 20 years away from it so far, that's fair. You can buy the 3-pack of Blades on Blu-ray, whatever, or 4K if they would do it, and like you can have fun of it with it that way. You can enjoy these 2 masterpieces and like put on this one and like have fun with it too if you want.
And I think that's part of it for me is so all the stuff, because Patton Oswalt's the first one that really posted all the shit that went wrong on Blade Trinity, and that all kind of came out before the movie even came out. So I was going into this in the theater expecting it to be an absolute dumpster fire. And I just don't think it's that. I don't think it's dumpster fire. I think it's still a relatively competent action movie. And so for me, I was pleasantly surprised by it. And so I think that's part of the reason that I've always had a little more affinity for it, is because I was truly expecting one of the most unwatchable pieces of shit. And so I had measured my expectations, and now because of that, again, obviously being the lifelong Ryan Reynolds fan and stuff, there's still stuff in it that works for me. But I get it. I mean, I get it. If you're expecting this to nail the landing of the ending trilogy of Blade, coming from what I think are 2 legitimate masterpieces, going into this one, like that's why I don't begrudge people who don't like it. I only really begrudge people who jump up in my shit because I do actually kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. It to be fair, it is one of those movies that makes me actively angry with it as I'm watching, and I want to fight the movie at certain points. Like the stuff with the Reaper dogs. I'm like, why do you want to shit on your own iconography like this? Why do you want to make fun of the shit that you've done that's so awesome? I don't know. It just, there's things that do bug me, but I do want to get to the fact that like the trilogy is kind of a weird thing that seems to have left us. And, you got to take this in the time of when it was made. And for Matrix 2, is that because, the Star Wars and probably to a lesser extent Indiana Jones, but really Star Wars cemented that like these big stories should be trilogies. Everyone just kind of felt like, oh, it's the third one, I'm done. And then sort of after Blade Trinity, you see, obviously with the MCU, it's like, why stop? There's more money to be made. And even Underworld, like Vice points out, that Underworld and Resident Evil really kind of ripped off the Blade aesthetic and made like 5 or 6 sequels or whatever. And it's just annoying that they thought they needed to end this, because it didn't need to end. And Snipes had plenty of great years left in him to continue making these movies. So, that's another frustrating thing in hindsight.
Well, for the whole prison thing.
Sure. But maybe if he kept making them, he could have paid his taxes.
Oh yeah, I mentioned like the cinematic lineage and like the landmarks of what Blade 1 and 2 are. And it's kind of funny in a way. I think part 3 is kind of that. So this is 2004 or 5. I think it's 2004. So not long after. A little bit long after the second one. So it's kind of funny that, and also in a way, it feels like it's like the start off of those like I don't know how to say this, those middling to whack, sometimes gems, mid-budget sci-fi, Push, Jumper. I am number 4. Like it feels like the start of those.
Yeah,
some of those are great. Some of those are cool. Some of those are great. Yeah. But it's like it's like now that we're in this era where we firmly established that the VFX and can at least the execs think that the VFX can do a lot of the heavy lifting that the script and stuff and direction should be doing. But of course now we know that that's not true. But according to the guy, the bean counters, that's all you need. So you get this kind of whole wave of like even the actual legit the mainstream superhero sequels, X-Men's for example. Like they kind of, to me, are like kind of diminishing returns in a way. Well, that's a separate story. But like point being that we have this whole next wave of like mid to higher budget sci-fi superhero stuff that you can tell the craft or the sincerity of like Raimi or Norrington or Del Toro is absent, and now it's just here's the IP, and here's the stars you recognize, and here's this shitty Goya script, which is a thing that happens a lot, and they're just going to put it out there, and that's what you get.
Here's a thing that I don't think we also give enough credit to, which is what happened between Blade 2 and Blade Trinity for New Line Cinema.
I don't remember.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
And so all of a sudden, Blade is not a franchise that I think New Line gives two shits about. And so they're going to give Goyer his chance to make the movie because it'll make him happy and he's made them money. But the fundamental shift in New Line's sort of marketing model and the movies they were greenlighting and making between 2002 and 2005 is cannot be like underestimated. Because obviously Blade 2 was still in production when they were making Lord of the Rings. So that movie, they didn't quite realize how, when they were making that, they didn't quite realize how massive, gargantuan Lord of the Rings would be. But as soon as Trinity comes around, like they already know, they're now the fucking, we're the Golden Compass studio, and we're the Aragon studio, and we're gonna literally bankrupt our studio making these big budget fantasy movies. Yeah. We don't give a shit about R-rated Blade, and so I think definitely part of that there, because honestly, had that not happened, I'm not sure Goyer even gets to direct the movie. I don't think they're going from Guillermo del Toro to David Goyer. But it's not something that I've seen a lot of people really talk about.
No, it's a great point, Mike.
But I do think it's important. It's an important factor for sure.
Yeah. And so real quick, it's like Lee mentioned the Resident Evils and the Underworlds. That's a fascinating thing that I brought up in my thesis. That I was being a little critical of them because I stated that they sort of, the edge and vibe of Blade and its blackness and its social commentary was sort of co-opted by white girls, and I didn't mean that like to condemn those movies. I just thought it was an interesting relic of the business at the time. Like, let's make. I wouldn't even say this. They said let's make a safe Blade, because those movies are pretty hard R in all regards. So I wouldn't say it's safe in that way, but just like interesting how they. I think maybe you could say it's a if not positive lesson they learned. They at least learned like we can do this harder stuff, and people will come and see it if we put more spins on it. And I think so. And funnily enough, Resident Evil, for example, that becomes its own weird auteur series as time goes on, with Anderson and Mila, helming those things. So I guess that's, to me, it's a positive outcome from the influence of Blade, even though people kind of trash those movies. Like, it's like, no, that's a director. Whether you like him or hate him, that's a director's vision. And even with Underworld, like, which is less of a cohesive vision, but like more of like they're taking this vampire werewolf mythology seriously. Like it's they're not making fun of it. They're not making the stupid Pomeranian jokes about it. They're taking, here's a hard R action series with vampire werewolves. We're gonna go for it. And again, I think for the most part, it succeeded in that. It learned like most of the right lessons from the Blade series to make its own thing and to be its own established franchise. And again, the thing is, like, both of those franchises made a lot of money. Like, and most of the people like dog them and hated them. Like, they did the right things for their respective properties. And so if you read my essay and you think I'm being critical of the movies, I didn't mean it that way. I just mean like that's an interesting outcome or interesting corollary or after effect of Blade. That's the most recognizable beyond the way superheroes like MCU and DC have come about.
Well, boys, I think that's a pretty eloquent point to Liam. You got one other thing?
Do you guys want me? I've told my Jessica Biel story on Twitter, but I've never told it on the podcast. If you hate me, it's not going to make you like me anymore. So, do you want to hear it?
Of course.
Okay. So this would be, I think I'm going to say it's like end of 2006, and just got back from shooting AVP 2. And we're back in Hollywood, and it's me with my friend Matthew Santoro, and and Greg Strauss, and we're at like a bar on the West Side, and Jessica Biel's there. Now Jessica Biel went to Tufts University, which is near BU, and so like I kind of feel like I had seen her and I'd been to Tufts to party, but I don't think I'd ever really met her. But it was enough of a connection that I was like, I feel like I can talk about Boston if this happens. And of course, Greg, he's like, let's send a bottle of champagne over. So he sent a bottle of champagne over, just free champagne to Jessica Biel. And, lovely enough, she comes over with the glass and says thank you and talks to us. And Daniel Pearl, who shot AVP2, obviously shot Texas Chainsaw. So kind of talked a little bit about that. Talked about Boston, Tufts. Look, just had a good vibe. Things were going well. She had great advice about how to deal with press. She was like, just always say you're so grateful. Just say you're so grateful. And she said it in such a funny way that I was like, she's got her head on her shoulders correctly. So anyway, flash forward. It was just a very nice thank you, a very nice chat. Flash forward towards the end of the night. And all of a sudden she comes over to me, and I think we're all a little bit more tipsy. And she's like, pretend you're my boyfriend. And I was like, what? Like literally out of my body experience. The Jessica Biel like grabs me and says, these guys are bothering me. Can you just pretend you're my boyfriend? And I was like, fucking absolutely. And like, so I actually walked up to people and was introduced as her boyfriend, and no one laughed. So that in itself is a victory for your guy right here. And so, get her out of whatever creepy situation was going on. And we're over at the bar and we're talking and we got some more drinks. And she thought I was a VFX guy, which is the same thing that keeps happening. And then of course my buddy immediately tries to like get in on it. But she has a hot friend who's talked to my buddy. And she's like, you guys are way too good looking for VFX guys. And is like, kind of giving us all these compliments, very, very, touchy feely. I'm like, is this happening? Is this happening? And it was, I kind of walked her out. Her brother was there, had like the perfect evening, perfect date with her. Innocent enough, and I it's that moment of like, should I ask for the number or like, is this just leave this as perfect? Because it's very like Goodwill Hunting moment. Like, if she says no, like my life is ruined. But if I just walk away right now, if I just walk away, it's the perfect clean thing, and I had the greatest experience because I can't date this woman. I can't keep this experience going on. So didn't ask, just got her safely to her brother outside of the bar, and me and my friend just walked back like floating above the street as we got to the house. And I think within like a month, she met Justin Timberlake, and it was all meant to be. But I had one of the great Hollywood encounters of my life, and just a pure, joyful experience. And cannot say Jessica Biel, great lady, great gal you got there, Timberlake. Good luck for you.
So I guess Blade 3 was worth it after all. I guess.
Yeah. I would have told her it was the greatest movie ever made in that moment.
All right, boys, that's it. We cannot top that. So and we've been going over 2 hours now. So let's wrap it up. Vice, where can people find you?
Yeah, I am on Letterboxd, being smart. I should have a review of some of the things I've seen recently coming up. Like the Project Wolf Hunting, which we might talk about later on. The Korean horror action movie. Because again, I'm in the stuff horror action month. It's a crazy, it's a good one, crazy. So I'll put that up soon on my Letterboxd. I'm on Instagram, being hot, making good food. It's because I'm an awesome guy. And as always, never fails, I'm on Twitter at Bifectus, talking shit. People still talk shit to me to this day. Like, I don't know you, man. Get off my dick. It's the best thing. It's I hate it, but it's the best. You can't fuck with me on Twitter, Bifectus. Come fuck with me. You can't fuck with me. That's how it is.
Liam, where can
Twitter and Instagram. This is lived up to all of my expectations. When we set this Super Creeps and Punchy Boys thing, we knew the first movie we wanted to do was Blade, because we wanted Vice to give us a sermon, and I feel like this has lived up to the billing. Thank you guys, and hope everybody enjoyed this one.
Yeah, likewise. This was exactly, we tried to get a couple of guests, and it's like, I actually think it ended up being better that it didn't work out. This was because Vice was the star of the show on this one. Well, right up until the end when you steal the crown from him, Liam.
It's like a tragic story though too, because I didn't. It could have gone even better, but you know what? I think it's all.
It's perfect. You know, I had this conversation, and for people listening, Schlock and I did an episode with Lindsay on The Crow and Halloween H2O. Please check that out. But talking about Brandon being preserved in amber with The Crow, that's your night with Jesse.
Yes, you're right.
Amber, that memory can never be tainted or changed in any way. So
right, and we've all gone on to have I think 6 children between the two of us, so it's all for the best. It's all for the best. It wouldn't have worked out, Jessica.
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Hibachi Justice. You can find the show on Twitter at A4E Podcast. That's literally the number 4, the letter E Podcast. And you're listening to us, so you know you can hear us where podcast episodes can be found. We might have, I heavily stressing might have something big cooked up for next week, but I don't want to jinx it. So I will not announce what movie we're talking about or anything along those lines. Just be on the lookout. We will announce it as soon as we can confirm it. So everybody,
but even if not, we're fucking cool, baby. You love us. It's all good. We love you.
Good episode, no matter what. So. And we're going to be talking about a very cool movie, no matter what. But yeah, I don't want to say any more. Just keep an eye on the Twitter feed, and we'll announce it as soon as we can. All right.
Have we ever let you down? Have we ever steered you wrong? Never.
Never. Love you, boys. Let's do this again next week.
Love you guys. Cheers.
Cheers.